So today we're going to be focused on point of view and how it impacts the way the story is told. So some vocabulary that we need to review before you move into this lesson includes point of view. So point of view is the mode of narration that the author employs to let the reader hear and see what takes place in the story, poem, or essay. So typically, whenever you guys think of point of view, I know the first thing that comes to mind is it first person, second person, third person, right? But today, what we're really focusing on is who's telling the story, right? Who is the narrator? Are they telling the story? So if my narrator is Delphine, which we know, right? Everything is from her perspective. And remember, when we were in class, we read the book, They Saw a Cat, and all these different animals saw this cat. And when they saw the cat, they saw them differently based on who was narrating. So we had the mouse who saw the cat. And whenever the mouse saw the cat, remember the picture was scary. It was this giant cat who had big claws and big sharp teeth. But when the dog saw the cat and it was his turn to narrate, the picture turned to this scraggly, skinny, weak looking animal, right? So, depending on who's telling the story, changes how it's told, because along with who narrates it, you bring their attitudes, their feelings, their emotions, all of these different things to the table. So, really, our focus today is for point of view who's telling the story. Are they an active narrator? So, if you're an active narrator, that means that you are a part of the story. If they're not an active narrator, that would mean that they're like on the outside of the story, kind of narrating what was happening, what's taking place between other characters. But we know that Delphine is an active character in this story, right? So our narrator is an active narrator. Now, the whole story is told from her point of view. So, how does that influence the way the story is told? So, if we look at this second definition, influence means the capacity to have an effect on the character development or behavior of someone or something. So, influence, how does what she says or how she says it, right? How does it impact the way we as readers understand what's happening, what's taking place? So, remember when we read Secret Agent Mother? The whole story was described from Delphine's point of view. Remember when she talked about the white lady trying to give them money? And when she was talking about that, it was very negative, right? Because she actually understood what the problem with that scenario was. But if it was told from Fern or Vonetta, who was very excited about getting the money, it would have been narrated differently, right? We might not have understood the problematic behavior of this woman, because it would have been narrated as this nice lady tried to give us money and we were so excited that we took it, right? It would have been more positive. Whereas the way Delphine told the story, she's older, she's more mature, she has a better understanding of the way the world was working in this time period, right? So when she told the story, she conveyed to the reader that this was problematic, right? This lady's behavior was not okay. She was treating them like, I think said animals in a zoo, right? So she narrated in a very it was more negative than if Fern or Vanetta would have narrated it, right? Because we got with the story her understanding of what was happening. So that's how narrators influence the way we read. And again, we have narrator down here in case I'm saying this word and it's something you don't know what I'm talking about. The narrator is someone who tells the story, right? In a work in fiction, the narrator is who determines the story's point of view. So you would look at the pronouns that Delphine is using, and Delphine uses I a lot. So it's going to be from first person perspective, right? She's an active character. It's her story she's telling. So the point of view is from Delphine, and she's telling it in first person. But I want to be very clear, because you're going to be asked in your exit ticket, how does the point of view influence? I'm not really asking you. So once you're in fifth grade and you're moving on, the assumption is you know if it's first person, you know if it's second person. So while it's really important to understand, because understanding that helps you understand is that narrator active? Do they have a role in this story? But really what we're asking you is, who's telling the story and how is that impactful? How does it change what we understand, right? So when you get to that question, you can tell me that the narrator is telling the story in first person, absolutely. But how does that impact the story, right? So that narrator is a part of this story. How does it change the way me, the reader, understands what's happening? So that's really our focus for today. So let's look at let's go ahead and look at our objective for today. So I can identify the speaker's point of view using textual details in order to explain how the speaker's point of view, that's what POV stands for, influences events in the story. So we're going to look at details in the text to determine the point of view, right? And then we're going to use those details to determine how it influenced the events in the story. So first of all, I have two anchor charts here. We're going to look at this anchor chart first, just determining point of view. How do I know what the point of view is when I'm reading a story? Well, you follow these steps and you'll be able to figure it out. So the first step is, who's telling the story? Well, we know in this story it's Delphine. Is the narrator a character in the story? So is it an active narrator? Yes, Delphine. She's one of my main characters. What words does the narrator use that can help me? Well, if we look at this story, we'll see she uses pronouns, I, me, we. So we know the point of view that she's reading from, and we know that she's giving us her feelings. There's a lot of feeling words. There's a lot of words that explain what she's experiencing. So this would tell me that it's told from Delphine's point of view. She's an active narrator. So that's what you're going to do when you determine point of view. Because later in the week, we're going to switch it up. You're going to read a different text and you're going to determine what is the point of view, right? So you need to know these steps. So even though we've talked about who the narrator is of this story, you still need to be thinking about it as you read. So once you've determined the point of view, you need to determine how that point of view affects the story. So over here we have some questions, some leading questions that can help you. So as you read, you want to think about, how is this story uniquely told when it's by this person? How would it change if it was told by someone else, right? So let's look at these steps and it'll make a little bit more sense. So the first step is, what would change if the story was told from a different point of view? So we talked about the lady in the airport, right? And we know that when Delphine told us that story, it was very negative. It exposed the problematic behavior of this woman who was trying to give them money, who was saying that, oh, look at you little girls, you're just so sweet, right? And she was treating them, as Delphine said, like animals in a zoo. Whereas if the story was told from Fern and Vonetta, who were just eating it up. They liked the attention from this lady and they wanted the money, right? So the story would have been told differently, and we as readers might not have understood the problematic behavior that was happening, right? Instead, it might have been described as, there's this really nice and caring lady. She saw us waiting in the airport for our mother, and she just wanted to give us a little bit of money because we were so well behaved, right? It would have been described much differently than it was by Delphine. So the story, the way we interpret it, would have changed. Now, what information would the reader miss? So what information would the reader miss if it was told from someone else? Well, like I said, we would have missed that it was problematic, that what this woman was doing. How would the reader feel differently, would the reader feel differently about one or more of the characters if the story was told from a different point of view? So using the scenario that we just had, yes, we would have felt differently about the lady in the airport. When we read it from Delphine's point of view, we felt a negative feeling toward this woman, right? We're like, she's racist, she's rude, like how could she do this? Things like that. Whereas if we would have read it from Fern and Vonetta's, we would have thought, what a nice lady. She was cared about them. She was concerned, right? So do you see how point of view actually changes the way we read a story? So I'm going to end this mini lesson here. We're going to move on to the annotation piece, which doesn't take that long. And then what you're going to need to do for me is you're going to read the rest of chapter 5, annotating it in your exit ticket. When you move to this exit ticket, Okay, you need to answer this question using ACCS. So some of us, I think we need a refresher on that. Remember, A is for our claim. We're answering the question. So we restate the question, we answer it. C, we're citing evidence and explaining how does this support my claim. Again, we do C again. We're citing evidence. How does it support my claim? And then we just wrap it all up by restating with the summary our claim. So our question is going to be, after we read Mean Lady Ming, how would the story change if it was told by Mean Lady Ming, right? So you're going to be thinking these questions right here. How would it be different if Mean Lady Ming was telling the story? What information would the reader miss, right? So you're going to have to do that, and using evidence to pull that out is going to be a little bit different, and it's going to feel a little different because you're going to be making a lot of assumptions about what you've read, but it'll be okay, and I'll model that in our annotation video. So I hope that this was helpful. If you have any questions, make sure to ask.